Today's session will be discussing confirmatory factor analysis, attitude towards research scale. Our presenter on the line is Dr. Jesus Tanguma. Dr. Tanguma is a contributing faculty member in the PhD psychology program here at Walden University. Dr. Heretic has also been a contributor on this project. She is unable to join us today, but I have listed her because, as Dr. Tanguma told me during our prep, she's had some significant data contributions. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to you, Dr. Tanguma. Great to have you.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, my name is Jesus Tanguma. I'm contributing faculty here in Walden, and I've been here approximately 11 years, and I have taught different classes. I have taught on the research, methodology, program evaluation, and different courses that I have been assigned to teach. I also serve as chair or second chair, but in all of them, I do serve as a statistics person or methodologist, because that is kind of what I like to do. That's kind of my cup of tea. So I welcome people to collaborate with me and research also. Next. Okay, this scale is pretty famous, or it's pretty well used in the literature. Is the attitude toward research, as people who teach research might know or might be aware. A lot of the students who get in there, they're afraid of research because somehow they link it with statistics. And so they have their perceptions or their beliefs that it's going to be a pretty tough course and they're going to be confused. And so even in the ones I teach, research methodology or the other courses that I teach, a lot of the students do feel that way. And when I was in other universities, it was the same situation. Sometimes they will say they don't like the person, like me, meaning that they don't like the course. But it's because of the fear of statistics, anxiety towards statistics, anxiety to all of those things that they don't know what they are really. And I would tell them it's just a lingo, it's just a language. So this person, Papa Anastasio, she's from Cyprus. Back in 2005, she came out with what is called attitude toward research. And the way she did it, she collected data from 226 students from the methodology, one of the methodology courses in educational research. And so she got the data, and then she conducted what we call exploratory factor analysis to see how the factors came out. And she found a 5-factor solution. And so going through the factors, one of the factors was the usefulness for the profession. Now, these students, the ones she surveyed, they were methodology in education. So possibly going to be diagnosticians or counselors or something of that sense, but they were taking the educational research methodology courses. And so this is how they group the items according to the answers from the students to the survey. So she had 5 factors, and the first one, she called it research usefulness for profession. And then you can see there, some of the items that kind of go with it: useful for my career, useful for every professional, knowledge of research is useful as a writing. So it had to do with usefulness of what they were learning. Next. Then comes up anxiety. Just sitting in the class or listening, or kind of when you walk in the classes, brick and mortar universities, you can feel the air being different than in other courses because they have that anxiety, that nervousness, the stress of being there. They're scared. They believe that it's difficult. They feel insecure. They have a whole lot of different feelings, and that's what makes the class sometimes more difficult to them than it really is. But that is how people feel. That's how they feel, and this is how these students felt. And so all of those items that we have here, they are towards anxiety. And the asterisk, most of us know that means that it's going to be reverse coded, okay? But it had to do with the same thing. They feel nervous, they feel the stress, they're anxious about the class, they're scared, Sometimes they don't even want to go to class. Sometimes they want to skip class. They believe it's a complex subject that is very complicated and difficult, and they feel insecure about doing the analysis. So it is something that is problematic to the teachers, because if they cannot overcome the anxiety, then how are we going to get the message across to them so they can understand it? So that's another one of the factors that the original author came up with. Then the next one comes up with positive attitudes. Just like everything else in life, there's some of us who like it, other people don't like them. So they go like, I love research, I enjoy research, I like research, I'm interested, it is interesting, and I'm inclined to study. So there's some people that can group on both sides. Now, which one has a better fit, we'll see later on. But it has both. Next, please. And then comes other one. Some students take courses according to what I have heard from them. They take them because they have to take them. Not that they really like them, but they have to take them. And so they find that they use research in their daily life. Some of them, they do say research-oriented thinking plays an important role in everyday life. Some of them will. And then we have some who say research is irrelevant to my life. And they tell me, I just have to take your class. I mean, they say there is no way around it. And I do tell them, everyone studying a master's degree, definitely a PhD degree, will have to do research one way or another, whether we do it quantitatively or qualitatively or mixed methodology. Everyone is going to go through those classes, and that's why we get the attitudes that they have, like, I'm here because I have no choice. And sometimes they even say, I postponed it as much as I could possibly do, but now I have to take it. And that, in a way, says that they're not very comfortable with it. And they do have others. There are other students who have trouble with arithmetic, for whatever the reason. And they find it very difficult to understand the concepts of research. And some of them make many mistakes in research. Now, on the understanding of the concepts, what I tell to my students is that is the lingo, is the language, is the vocabulary that we speak, and to them it sounds like a totally foreign language. It's like we don't communicate because the two languages they're hardly related at all. And so I, especially to my dissertation students, I tell them, read more articles, go read dissertations, go read this, go read that, because that is how you're going to learn the language. So that's for this person. Next one. Then in 2010, somebody else, Walker, came up and evaluated the factor structure that was developed by Papanastasiou. So this Walker guy, he collected data from 204 students in graduate education research master classes at a large university. So now we got another person looking at the scale and see how well does it fit. So that's what this one is investigating, the confirmatory factor of the attitudes. So he created, from the data, he created in probably Amos, from what I saw, it was Amos. He created a one factor model, like all the items that the person had developed going into one single model. We call it a unimodel. But then the model fit indices indicated a non-acceptable fit. So when we run factor analysis, we look at different things, and one of those things is what we call fit indices. And we have, for example, chi-square and norm chi-square, comparative fit index, we call it CFI, we call it AGFI, RMSEA. There are different fit indices that we look at depending on what kind of analysis we're running on the SEM. But those fit indices, according to Walker, did not fit or did not indicate an acceptable fit. So he turned around and then he tested a five-factor model that was originally derived by Papanastasiou. So he said, okay, the one-factor model didn't work. It's not a unimodel. It's good to know. So he turned around and said, okay, I want to test her model with my data and see what happens. So this one was collected the data most likely in a university here in the United States, and the other one was from Cyprus. So you have different people, different subjects taking the same attitudes toward research scale. And now we see that they have that the model that was originally developed did not fit. So he tested the five factor model, and as with the one factor model, it did not fit. So it had a poor fit. That's what we call it. Poor fit. So even though it was originally supposed to be or had been derived as a five factor model by the original person, when they changed the subjects from Cyprus students to US students, it didn't hold. That's how we speak. The model didn't fit the data. So the model that was originally derived was not a good model, a good fitting model, or did not hold for the people, for the students that this person Walker was using from the United States. And so in a way, it says it's the same scale, different subjects, we get different results. And that's what I'm trying to illustrate here. So what he did then was, okay, I want to go via exploratory factor analysis, just like other people have done. And he derived a three-factor model, which had acceptable fit indices. When we say this, acceptable fit indices, when you go from the five-factor model to a three-factor model, we do what we call, we trim the tree, we look at the theory, we don't just drop items because we don't like them. No, we drop items either because the fit indices doesn't work, modification indices tell us to do so, and theory tell us to do so. So when I work with other faculty or other researchers and things like this, in the old days, we would sit next to each other, side by side. I would say, okay, this one doesn't work statistically speaking. And then the other person, yeah, it doesn't work based on theory either. And so it's always a great idea to look at fit indices, modification indices, as well as the theory. Does it make sense to drop or not? Next, please. And so this Walker person, he came out with this lining up of factors, items, the items that were in the survey loaded into what we call factor one, and Walker decided to call it research use. So all of this, when I ran it, the Cronbach alpha for all these items line up, they have a pretty good alpha, indicating internal consistency is pretty well. And then we have negative attitudes, positive attitudes. So some of the items, as we will see later on, they change from being in one factor going to another factor, depending on the subject that we're using. So what was difficult for some, now it becomes easy for others. And that's, to me, that's something that I put emphasis on, because it means that the scale worked for some people or had an acceptable fit, but now it doesn't. And when we do the revising, like this person, when he revised the original scale and subjected it to exploratory factor analysis and then test whatever was derived via a confirmatory factor analysis, this is what we got. And so it's a whole process that goes with it. Next, please. So up to there, that's what people are doing. And in the literature, we follow the literature, or I follow the literature and say, okay, so what's going on with this thing? Then this person came around, but this one is from Turkey. So the scale, the same scale that was developed in Cyprus was used in the US, now it's being used in Turkey, so it's traveling all over the world. But this one is saying, okay, so the adaptation of the scale into the Turkish language. So they were trying to see how well can they use that scale in a college or university in Turkey. So they got students from the College of Education at Gazi University and Traki University in Turkey. And they were taking scientific research methods course. So it kind of applies to us because it's a research methods course, whether the scientific or whatever they want to call them. And at one place I was teaching for the business college, and they asked me about business, and I said, I don't know business, but I know research and I know statistics. So the statistics don't change, the formulas don't change, the X's and the Y's don't change. The labels that we use to the variables might change, but not the methodology. So now we go here, and if anybody's wondering why they use this, it's because they believe, kind of what I believe, statistics don't change. So it makes sense. And the purpose of the study was to adapt the ATR to Turkish culture and see how they can find ways to help their own students in the College of Education to not fear statistics, not fear research, or alleviate, ameliorate the fear that they have towards the class itself. So if we can find things to do, activities, mindfulness, something that we can do in order to decrease the anxiety that they have and increase the way of thinking about a topic, it will help all the students. And that's what we're trying to find out. So the ATR was translated into Turkish. It was checked for language validity and administered to 391 students. It's a good sample size. When they tested it, according to the answers, the scale maintained its original form within the Turkic culture. I went through the paper, and it made sense. When I first read it, I kind of hesitated. Maybe I misunderstood something, but then I went and read the whole article from beginning to end. And according to what was published, they kept the original form. Not many times did it happen, as my research on this topic went into a lot of studies, like 10, 15 studies that I found. But from time to time, we do find one that says, okay, it perfectly fit our students. Okay. So can we go to the next one, please? So Papa Anastasio, I believe, looking around what is happening with her original scale, she decided, okay, I'm gonna go and see, maybe there is something I need to change to it. Maybe there's something else I can do to it. Maybe the other people are finding things that I didn't see or didn't pay attention, or something was going through her mind, and she decided, okay, I'm gonna go do it again. So from 2005 to 2014, she changed her mind and said, okay, I want to go do it. So she collected data from 317 undergraduate educational research methods students. And we go the same way, research methods, educational. We do have educational psychology here. We do have education, the side of education also. We eat another one. And they were from the same place, Cyprus. So once she got the 317 students, she went through exploratory factor analysis and see what she would get from that data set. And then from there, she determined or concluded that the ATR scale, which was originally 32 items, she went down to 19 items and only 3 factors. And the EFA, those of us who have worked with EFA, you have cross loadings, you have low loadings, and there are many, many things that happen, and that's why items get dropped. Again, this is not because I like them or I don't like the items. No, it's all based on the results of the EFA, the communality, variance explained, the wrong loading or cross loadings, or one factor having only 1 or 2 items. And most of the time we do prefer to have 3 or more items in each one of the factors. So when we look at the EFA results, we spend quite some time looking as to what it is that is happening before we drop items or we don't drop items. And then even after we drop the items, we go back and run the Chromebook Alpha again to see, like in this case, they have 3 factors. we go and see how those three factors are lining up. And then how the items that make up the three factors internally are behaving. And so she decided, okay, I want to start with 19 items, three factors. Then she turns around and says, okay, via confirmatory factor analysis, CFA, she concluded that revised ATR has a strong psychometric properties. Same thing I said before when we said we have a good fit to the data and may confidently be used to assess attitudes toward research. So now she's saying with the 19 items, the three factors, it is more psychometrically property, and we may use the scale with more confidence in it. So in a little while, I'll show you the lineup of all the items as they go from one study to another study. And so now she has three factors, and here's the first one. Research is useful for my career. Research is connected. And all of these are kind of the positive side. Can we go to the next one, please? There's most likely, even though we don't like it, most likely there will always be anxiety in those courses. People will be scared. People will be stressed. Just hearing the name or reading the name, research, methodology, they will take a step back. Research courses make me nervous, and research courses are difficult. So this is what we're trying to find ways to overcome and help the students see how we can minimize this and say, instead of being anxious, well, maybe we can be a little bit anxious. Instead of being scared, well, maybe I'm okay to be there. I'm not really into the mathematics, but I can still stay there. And all of these things play an important role in the assessment or in the learning of the student. And the last one would be positive research predispositions. I enjoy my research courses. I love research because there are some of us who like, and there are some others who kind of shy away, but because it is required, even though they have all of these feelings, mixed feelings, they still have to take it. And then they say that they find the courses interesting, and some of the courses are pleasant to them. Next, please. So now that was 2014, so now we go to 2015. So what happened in 2015? They still keep scrutinizing the same ATR scale. So now we go and find that this person, vendor was the same, collected data from 185 research methodology honors course. Where? South Africa. So we went from Cyprus to Turkey to the US to South Africa. So the same scale is traveling all over the place. But then according to this person, neither the original 5-factor, the one that was derived back in 2005 by Papanastasiou, or the reduced 3-factor that was reduced more recently, nor a 1-factor, where we only have a unidimensional, fitted the data well. So the original one didn't fit. The second one she developed didn't fit. The unidimensional, where all the items lump into 1-factor, did not fit either. So like, okay, so what do we do now? So they decided to do what other people have done. Run the EFA and find out the solution that they get. And the lining up of the items, how do the items line up? How do the factors, what are the composition of the factors? And so they go through it. And they derive a 3-factor solution, which fitted the data well. And so now we got, see this name, positive outlook on research, we haven't had it. They came out with it. Can we go to the next one? Anxiety and difficulty is not the title that we had seen anywhere else, but it encompasses a lot of the items that belong to difficulty and items that belong to anxiety in the regional side. Well, now from these people who are from South Africa, for whatever that reason, they feel that they go together, or the students answer in such a way that those items they do go together based on the answers provided by the students. And then at the bottom, we have research useful to every professional, usefulness of research. So that one we have seen. But it's interesting to see how number 2, anxiety and difficulty, it groups some of the items from different factors to put them together. And that's done based on the factor loadings. Okay, can we go to the next one? So eventually we come to this person, Howard and Michael, these 2 persons, and they go and try to do something similar to what other people have done. It's like, and to me, when I did mine, it's like we're trying to find ways to help the students minimize anxiety, minimize being quiet in the class. We minimize their fear. If we can find ways to teach the classes, those classes, in such a way that the students don't have high levels of anxiety, high levels of stress, high levels of all of those that we call them anxiety from that side, and improve the other ones, then we're doing a better job for the students. So they went the same way. They collected data from 128 graduate clinical psychology students at a university in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, so probably most likely in the US. It didn't specify, but I would assume it is in the US. So they fitted the model to the data, and they concluded that neither the original 5-factor, the one that was derived in 2005 by Panastasio, didn't fit. The 3-factor model that she derived later on didn't fit. So those things that she has been working on or deriving, they did not fit the people from the United States, those 128 students, not all the people, just those that they collected data from. And then they turned around and went the same way. Okay, we are going to go exploratory factor analysis and see what we find. And so they derive a 3-factor, 4-factor, and 7-factor models. And again, it's the same kind of thing. Sometimes when we go through EFA, sometimes in the 3-factor, if that's the one that was not chosen, or people selected or opted for not selecting that one, is because in those 3 factors, too many of the things are cross-loading, and so that's not really good for factor analysis. The 4-factor, kind of the same thing. Too many things cross-loading, and they didn't fit. So they settled for what they call a 7-factor model. And so according to them, and what I read, fit indices and everything else that goes with it, the 7-factor model had the best fit to the data. Can we see, please? There. And now we have kind of the same that we have been seeing in the past. Positive attitudes toward research. Okay, and then they go kind of the same, lining up with the others, some of them. But this is interesting because now in 1 factor, the authors lump together what we call research anxiety and research difficulty. And when I look at the beta weights, they were somewhat similar. The lining up of the factors into lining up of the items into the factors. The loadings were pretty similar, so it makes sense to put them together, even though here we have to classify them as anxiety and difficulty. Some people will say anxiety is one thing, difficulty something else, but based on the data that they had, that was what came up. Next, please. And then there's another one, it's just purely anxiety, and there's another one that is purely usefulness. And this one is pretty direct, and when we look at the loadings of the items, there is no doubt where they belong. And this one, there is no doubt where you belong. Can you go back one, please? And this one is kind of ambiguous. Do they belong here? Do they belong here? But based on the loadings, that was the best that the authors could do. So some of them are pretty straightforward on the loading. And when we look at the commonalities, when we look at the factors lineup, is pretty clear cut where they're gonna go, but then some other times it's not. Next one, next two. One more. There. Thank you. No, there you go. Thank you. And so we see the same thing here. Research usefulness and positive attitudes. So some of them will say, okay, yeah, research is useful as writing, is useful as writing, so we do it. People who are into research, we enjoy doing research, we enjoy writing. We do what we do because we like it, and there's something that is in there that motivates us to keep doing it. So they go together, the positive attitude and the useful. So here we have more student benefit from research. Yeah, it's positive, but you still see some of the cross-loading, some of the ambiguity. Do they go here? Do they go there? But if they're not enough to go on this one, then you have to make the best decision possible, because most of the time researchers prefer to have 3 items or more going to any given factor. And if you only have 1 or 2, then sometimes it's not a strong factor or stable. But then you have other factors that are pretty steady. And this one is pretty well defined. I use research in my daily life, apply to my personal life, my daily life. So yeah, I mean, no question they're gonna go all together. And then we have the last one. No, one more, back. There. We have number 7. We see the same situation happening. Here you have research usefulness, okay? Research to relevance to life and positive attitude. And this, all I can say, those of you who are pretty well versed in factor analysis, the loadings were somewhat low, but they were consistently low. And that's why, in my opinion, the authors put it that way. And so they call it like a 3-thing factor. Okay. Next, please. Can you go one? There. Then we come around. Okay. We came around. Dr. Hertig and I. So back in 2020, she collected data through LinkedIn, Facebook, and different other ways. I also believe that she collected data from Walden alumni students. But she collected enough data. She collected 357 of the college students from university in the United States, and they were mostly online. Okay. Or they were primarily online students, the ones who answered. But the survey were always online. But you collected enough data, what we call 357, enough data to do both the exploratory and the confirmatory factor analysis. So when we ran the data, we got the 5 factors here. So we got usefulness of research, and they go the same. They kind of line up the same as the others. Research is useful for my career, and there's only one here that is going to be reverse coded. So they were pretty well grouping within the factor, but not necessarily the way other authors got their factor 1, or the one that they call usefulness of research. Can we go to the next one, please? And then we have positive enjoyment. Okay, they're pretty well clear cut. And I enjoy research. I like research. I love research. I'm interested in research. So all of them are on the loading. They go pretty well. The factor loadings are pretty well there. Now we go to this one, insecurity. And if you notice, the names of the factors keep changing. Why? Because of the composition of the factor. So it is very difficult to go from sample to sample to sample to sample and get the same results. Then we have what we call insecurity. And this, as well as we know, there will be reverse coded. And then you have difficulty of research. Research is stressful, complicated, difficult, and complex. So all of this is where we're trying to find ways to improve the teaching, the explaining, so that we can minimize the anxiety, the nervousness, the being scared, that is too complicated, that is difficult, so that the students can not just do better as a class or as a course, but learn and kind of enjoy what they do, because the ones going through dissertation, they will do all of this. They have to do it. And then some of them will eventually might end up doing research. And if they don't do research, they will be reading research, and they can apply in their own jobs, whatever it is that they do. So our emphasis is finding ways to minimize this here. Okay, can we go next page? So this is what was originally derived. I don't expect you to memorize it all that way, but this is there in case anybody ever wants it. It's there, or you can contact me and I'll provide it to you. And this is how that 32 items broke down in her original scale, where we have the 5 factors. And so we go and say, okay, so what is in factor 1, in factor 2, and so on. And that was originally the derivation. Now, on the next page, can you go to the next? We have the breakdown of the items. How they do it, no. How they ended up with each one of us. So you can see in 2005, these are the items that made up, and you don't remember, I don't remember either, all the what each one of the numbers stands for, but we can always go to the scale. And so, okay, but we see that, like on this one, according to her, item 2, whatever it was, should be there, but it's not here. According to Walker, 31 is here, but it's not there. And so same thing for 15. Walker got 15 here, but 15 wasn't there. And then if we continue looking, we say, okay, so we go to anxiety. So to the students of Papanastasiou survey and collected data from, these items indicated or meant anxiety to them. But for Walker, I think only 1 or 2, like 28 and 28, and 1 and 1, but nothing else fell into place here. And then on this one, relevance of life, for Walker, for whatever the reason, there were no items that survived here and no item that survived there. And so when we see these spots, blank spots like Papanastasiou 2014, so she went from having relevance to life, now there is no relevance to life. Research difficulty, now there is no research difficulty. From being usefulness, she had all of these items, now she only has 8, and yes, it was there. 14, yes, it was there. 20, yes, it was there. And 24. But what about all the others? 17, 21, 22, 27. So it's the same person, the same country, 9 years apart, the studies, data collection, and look how things change. Now, so that we can have questions and answers. Now, when we did it, this is what we got. There was no number 2. We have a 31. That she didn't have 31. For whatever the reason, the persons that Dr. Herty collected data from, they did not indicate anything having to do with relevance of life. The items that were, the items that were in the original scale that had to do with research difficulty, they didn't show up for us. So, to me, this here is the most important thing. You take a scale and you apply and you get something. You change the people. These are Cyprus students. These are US students. I think Northwest, something like that. But just the fact that we change the sample, the lining up changes. Sometimes to such an extreme that no items load up here and no items load up there. In this case, no items loaded here and no items loaded up for us. So to me, can you go to the next one, please? This is what I want to say, that a scale is developed with a specific sample in mind, but it is highly unlikely that the scale will perfectly fit another given example. And remember, this is just one scale that I have worked with. And we don't know the reasons. Could be the culture, could be the language, it could be any number of things that can happen. The Crumbus alpha may change significantly from those originally derived. Different items are grouping into the original factors, but personally speaking, to me, the most important thing is that what a researcher defined as anxiety might not mean anxiety for somebody else. And I see, or I have worked with students in these days when they use something we call life satisfaction. Several dissertations have that in there. I'm not certain that this is the correct spelling, but that's the point is the same. If the total score of a scale X, Y, Z, okay, I just made it up, is used to predict life satisfaction, but the grouping of the items has changed. Put it this way, this scale, whatever it is, X, Y, Z, is being used to predict life satisfaction. But the grouping of the items of X, Y, Z changed. For all we know, we might be predicting something else. And yet we tell the students, or we tell the client, or we tell the patient, or we tell whoever, yeah, your life satisfaction is really good. But are we really predicting life satisfaction? Can we go to the next one? No,
Sure, and there is a
okay. Now is the time for you to ask.
And there is a comment and question in the chat by Dr. Laura Lynn. This is really interesting, Jose. Jesus, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I appreciate all of the foundational studies shared here. In 2007, Dr. Lynn had a team looking at research self-efficacy in our research courses. Do you recommend faculty use a measure like this to understand students' initial attitude and readiness as they start a research course or research courses?
Okay. I haven't asked here in Walden, but where I was at other universities, we would do a lot of research with our own students. We will, like on this one, I had one where we did, because of my years in this thing, my students in the statistics, they were like the piggy, they were used as a way to test what they now call mini term. We will go from the whole long semester to 3 weeks, intensive, very, very intensive. And of course, I collected data, okay? Then time went on, they started coming up with different softwares and different things that students would use. And so I collected data. And so if it were possible to collect data here, I would say yes. Now, if not here, if you work at another university, I would say yes. Anyway, I look at it, it's a yes, but you always have to go and get permission from the university, from the IRB. But first of all, is somebody has to authorize you to say, yes, I can start the process, and then I can go through IRB and do all the other things that we need to do. That answers the question?
Oh, yes, Jesus, sort of. What I was thinking about, and yeah, I'm part of the research data committee. That would be the group. If someone wanted to do research at Walden students, that would be it. But I was actually thinking about it a little differently. Do you think this tool is ready? Almost like I was thinking about instructors who just want to have a sense of the nature of their students and their attitudes and their feelings as they start the course. It might impact
yes,
how they're shaping instruction.
Yes, because we already have an idea how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
And because we know our students, they're like, okay, to this specific student, I need to approach him or her in one way different than approach another student. Because there are students and there are different people and they are unique. But if I know something besides the name of the student. Like if we administer some questionnaires and we say, okay, well, this one is pretty good on the math, pretty confident, so I don't need to spend so much time with this one. But guess what? This other one really needs help, because on the scale, I find out that he or she is weak on the math, or just
Right.
anxiety, testing anxiety. And there are different ways that we can get information from them and then apply it. I don't remember where I did one. I think it was at a high school when I was in assessment something, but we ended up finding out that one student that I remember, but there might be more, many more. That student needed, like, we conferenced with the teacher and said, look, this student needs to test kind of by herself. As
Right.
long as she's in the classroom, she panics, because I observed the student and I said, you know, ma'am, you know the material. Oh, well, I'll give you my own example, okay? Personal example. When I was doing my bachelor's in mathematics, one time, many years ago, I went to the door. At that time, they would post the doors, they would post the grades on the door, and the professor asked me, what are you looking for? And I said, I'm looking for my grade. And he said, well, I haven't finished. You want to come in and sit down? And he asked me, while I'm doing this, the professor, can you solve those problems that I have on the board, because I'm going to use them in the next class? I said, sure. And I went over and just worked them out. When I finished, he said, you were supposed to fail.
Wow.
But because you know the math, it seems to me you don't know the language, but you know the math. And so I passed, okay? But it's the same thing. He found out what I did not know, and he found ways to help me.
Right. That's one thing that just sort of started jumping out to me as as someone years ago who was teaching our research courses, and, the diversity of our students and their comfort levels. I think that, this could be a really useful tool for our instructors to be more, just from the start, to have that sense of sort of flexible, dynamic approach with different students. And the idea of, and I know many of our students have that type of nervousness, particularly when it comes to areas of statistics and things like that, that being able to meet students where they're at based on some initial information. That's why I'm wondering if this scale could be part of a toolbox that our research faculty might use.
Yes, but now my question to you would be, or anybody who's there, would be, who would administer the test, or who would administer the survey, and who would get to see the results of the survey? Because if I administer in my class, for example, I'm doing this semester coming up, I'll be doing survey methodology, survey research methodology, okay? So there will be students in there, and through the semester, I find out some who are weak, some who are strong, some who are in between, and anything. But if my students are given a survey through some link somehow, but then I don't get to see the results, then I don't know how to help them. Make sense?
Right. Yeah. I was kind of thinking about it as an instructor tool.
Oh, okay.
Rather than as not as a study per se, but as an instructor tool for understanding your students.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would totally support you on that. And if I were to be given permission, I mean, we could start with one of my classes, but I'm not the one who gives permissions. I'm just the instructor. I'm contributing faculty.
It's exciting to think about. And I think as we really want to be more supportive and targeted, as we look at, methodology courses and methodology training and support. I believe I have a few colleagues on the line here that are probably thinking the same types of things as they do our support services for students. And
yes, most definitely, because then once we identify with the who, for example, who, like in that case I gave you, it was me. I went to ask, and I didn't know why he asked me to do the pronouns, but he said, it's obvious to me, you know, the trigonometry, the algebra, all of those things that I was doing. It's just that when it comes to word problems, reading problems, you have difficulty because of your English. And I say, yes. And so he knew what my weakness was. So he found ways to help me. So if I am the instructor and next week, when the classes begin, we administer something, then we get the results and I can say, okay, well, Jesus is weak on this, Reggie is weak at this, Arfa is really good on this, Morris this. And so I have a better idea to how to help each one of my students, because eventually we, or at least in my class, we communicate, we go through BBB, and we find ways to help each other. But the more I know about the student, the better I can help. Because behind the number or behind the name, there's a person. And we need to know the person.
Exactly. And I have one other question, a little bit different. I would love to see our faculty who are interested in research, pursue paths like this where they do apply, look at different instruments and apply factor analysis, thinking about how instruments evolve. Remind me again, and I think you brought it up through here, what inspired you to say, I want to continue the path of factor analysis on this particular instrument?
Dr. Hertig and we collected data. When she approached me, or when she asked, because I asked her, I want to know, I want to apply this, I want to use this scale to see what I learned. And then if not here, elsewhere, I can use it for what I want to do with my students. And she said, well, we can coordinate. And she asked me, why don't you do it? I said, because I have no way of collecting data. And she said, oh, it's easy for me. So that's how she got in. And so we combined. And then as we were going through it, she also, just like you, she liked the topic. We presented one paper. No, I did not go present. She presented the paper at APS somewhere 2020, 21, somewhere around there. And then we published a paper from the findings, because we wanted, and on the same scale, on the same survey, we had this scale, and then we had something with the statistics, another scale. And so we kind of combine them and say, yeah, I mean, it looks to us, to me at least, that if you have anxiety in research, you're gonna be, or you have problems in statistics, they correlate very, very highly. So I just wanted to know, because when I was in the other universities, I would see my students struggle.
Mhm.
But then I was there able to go to the research office, and they knew me there. I would sit with them and do research with them. They knew me as to, okay, so let's give them permission to collect data from his own students. And there were several of us teaching like statistics, quantitative methodology for business. So I will go and say, hey, can I collect data from your students? And we collect data. And so that's why I wanted to do it here, to see how is it that the students are doing it. But we did not collect data from Walden, my students or her students, okay? We collect the data elsewhere, but I still get the feeling of what I wanted to find out.
Right. No, that's interesting. And I also wanted to applaud that point you had about re-examining anxiety and how the definition might be different. That's just something that I think is so important as we look at just even questioning, terms and terminology over time. But no, this is really, really interesting. And it's sparked my intrigue again in this area. So thank you. But I want to make sure other folks have a few minutes to ask questions too.
Also, the thing that I tell my students, because some of them, and there's nothing wrong with quantitative or being qualitative. Okay? There's nothing wrong in my mind about those two. Some of them say, but I'm qualitative, I'm not going to use this. I say, yes, you will not be generating quantitative research, but you will be consuming quantitative research
Exactly.
in
Excellent
your
point.
field.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do. I don't know what you're going to do, but sooner or later, you will be reading journals. And if you don't know how to do the R square, or you don't know not how to do it, you don't know what it tells you, or what the beta weight tells you, or all of this tell you, then how are you going to help your patients?
Right. And then also, you never know where their questions will lead them in the future. As doctorally prepared professionals, they'll go back and say, I remember. I remember this back. So that's kind of always where I like to weigh in is, your method fits your question, and you don't know where your questions will lead you. So this is great.
Okay.
Hi, this is, am I on? I think I'm on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi,
Yeah.
Jesus. Glad to hear from you, actually. I think we spoke in the past few times. So, I mean, I understand that the developing a scale is actually art and science. Definitely, there is no one way to do naming a factor or looking at like, is that the right construct? And then is this item is really measuring this construct and things like that. So, but however, while you're presenting all this background and things like that, I was thinking, how can we use this in our with our students? And then Laura just jump in that. So, but I think I have a very kind of idea that it may fit since the Reggie and Maurice were developing the new research courses, it may be one of those activities that we can present from the beginning of each courses, and then but with the 30 items it's kind of long, and then for the students and they actually take up the time to answer it every time they have a research course, but only maybe the beginning course is just the first course. So then, or we can actually maybe kind of reduce the items as kind of pick the really strong items and then develop maybe for all our students actually we only maybe 10-15 items and then measure it and then kind of continually collect that data, and then the faculty can access that data. Laura, you can access that data, and I can, as an advisor, I can access that data somehow, and actually we'll know about the we'll know about the attitude of our students when they're beginning, and maybe also maybe at the end of the, like we have like 4 courses, so
Right.
maybe we can have actually the 4 course. So kind of designing this kind of data collection for our university, it's probably give us a lot of information, and looking at, and probably we can do something about this kind of topic. So I am really excited, and thank you for actually presenting this today, and I actually appreciate that all the effort that you put it in putting
It's
this
fun.
presentation
To me, it was a lot of
together.
fun.
Yeah.
I like it. I enjoy it. And then there's another one that I'm thinking about, but I don't know when I'll do it. Eventually I will do it, but it has to do with the writing. Like, yeah, that we can do an assessment at the time the students come in towards research, towards the thing that we were just discussing. Well, what if, like, and the reason I'm saying this is because when we get to dissertation, some of the students have difficulty. So if we can diagnose them from the beginning or somewhere along the line, and then kind of guide them over to the classes or materials or resources, so that when they start writing their dissertation, we, the committee, are not held back because of the writing. Instead, because the writing will be much, much better, we just continue going, not like, okay, you missed the period, you missed the comma, you missed the citation, you missed this, the verb subjects. And so if we were to do something like that also, I'm pretty sure it will help all of us.
Well, wonderful. Well, Jesus's email address is on the screen here, so please don't hesitate to reach out and collaborate. This has been wonderful. Dr. Tanguma, I really appreciate you presenting this, and thank you for all that joined today. Lots of great questions, comments, and I think some potential research opportunities here.
Okay, well, if anybody wants to contact me, if there's a way we can communicate and work on projects, collaborate, I do it with my students, with my dissertation students, and sometimes I do it on my own. So more than glad to help or work with anybody.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.